Things are a bit tense behind the scenes with the Los Angeles Rams. Today, I have some bad news and some good news regarding something everyone has been waiting a long time for. Let me get right to the point. We have some important updates concerning the Rams. The bad news is that Aaron Donald won't be suiting up for the Rams just yet, at least not right now. I'll share the good news with you in a moment. But first, I want to hear from you. Do you think Aaron Donald is an indispensable piece for the Rams to reach the Super Bowl? Or do you think our defense is solid enough as it is? Leave a comment below. Either way, hit the like button if you're a true Rams fan. And write, "Go Rams! My heart is blue and gold." So, the bad news, as I mentioned, is that Donald isn't coming back right now. The good news is that it looks like he'll return after the summer. Of course, nothing is set in stone yet. It's just speculation. But I heard something that got me really excited. NFL insider Adam Schefter explained that Aaron Donald remains focused on reaching peak physical shape before making any decision about a comeback. According to the report, Donald wants to ensure that, if he does return, he can truly be the player he expects himself to be. After spending 2 years away from football, he is working to regain the level of conditioning that defined his legendary career. The key takeaway from this update is that nothing suggests he has decided against returning. On the contrary, it seems he doesn't want to rush anything before believing his body is ready. This detail is extremely important, as many fans only saw brief summaries implying that a comeback was becoming less likely. When you hear the full explanation, the situation looks very different. The issue isn't a lack of interest on Donald's part. It's about ensuring he can compete at the standard he has always set for himself. If he can't be the Aaron Donald everyone knows, he doesn't want to step onto an NFL field again until he believes he is capable of doing so. This should actually instill confidence in Rams fans. No one expected a player who had been away from the sport to announce his return immediately. Football-specific fitness differs from general physical conditioning. It takes time, especially for someone who has always relied on elite strength, conditioning, and explosiveness. Donald built his reputation by dominating offensive lines week in and week out, and it makes perfect sense for him to refuse to return unless he feels capable of playing at a level befitting his legacy. The biggest question now becomes simple. What exactly does "later this summer" mean? That has become the timeline everyone is trying to understand. Fortunately, there are several important dates coming up that help paint a clearer picture. Training camp begins with veterans and rookies fully reporting on July 29th. While many fans would love to see Donald walk into camp on day one, that now appears unlikely based on the latest information. Instead, attention shifts toward the preseason schedule. The Rams begin preseason action on August 15th against Kansas City. They then finish preseason on August 27th against the Los Angeles Chargers. Based on everything that has been discussed recently, that period between the first and final preseason games appears to be the most realistic window for any potential Aaron Donald announcement if he decides he is ready. That timing would still leave enough opportunity for him to prepare before the regular season opener against the San Francisco 49ers in Melbourne, Australia on September 10th. While there are no guarantees, the timeline continues pointing toward a late training camp arrival rather than an early one. This is not a completely new idea either. Another recent report from Ian Rappaport also suggested that if Donald returns, it would probably happen toward the end of training camp, or even after it has already begun. That possibility has remained consistent throughout the conversation surrounding his comeback. There is also another reason why a later arrival makes sense. Donald would not necessarily be expected to return and immediately play every defensive snap. Instead, he could be used in a more specialized role. Managing his workload would allow him to stay fresh while still making a major impact during the most important situations. That approach would also reduce unnecessary wear on his body after spending time away from the game. Because of that, there may not be any reason for Donald to participate in every practice throughout training camp. If the goal is simply preparing him for meaningful regular season football, arriving later could actually fit perfectly with that plan. Some fans recently believed that a special Rams announcement might include Aaron Donald revealing his comeback while wearing a new uniform. As exciting as that idea sounded, the latest discussion suggests that expectation was probably unrealistic. The focus remains on Donald's physical preparation rather than creating a dramatic public announcement. While everyone would love to see one of the greatest defensive players in franchise history return in spectacular fashion, reality usually works a little differently. Donald appears focused on one thing above everything else, making sure his body can handle NFL football again. Another fascinating part of this situation involves his contract. Many Rams fans believed his previous agreement had essentially been closed following his retirement, especially after the organization reportedly paid a significant farewell bonus. However, more recent discussion suggests that may not actually be the case. Instead, the current understanding is that Aaron Donald's contract is still active, with approximately $30 million remaining. That creates an entirely different conversation, because if he returns under those terms, he would immediately become one of the highest-paid edge defenders in football. That naturally raises another question. Would Donald actually return on that contract? At the moment, it seems difficult to imagine. It would likely require some form of restructuring before any agreement becomes official. This is not about questioning Donald's value or everything he has accomplished throughout his career. Few players in NFL history have dominated the way he has. The reality is simply that circumstances have changed. If Donald comes back at 35 years old after time away from football, expectations will naturally be different than they were during the peak of his career. He may still be capable of making game-changing plays, but his workload will almost certainly be more controlled. That reduced snap count makes a contract adjustment feel like a logical possibility. It would benefit both Donald and the Rams while giving the organization greater salary cap flexibility moving forward. There is also the belief that Donald understands the current position of the team. If his goal is truly helping the Rams compete for another championship, restructuring his deal could become one way to make that happen. Of course, none of this matters unless he first reaches the point where he believes he is physically ready. That remains the biggest piece of the entire story. While the Aaron Donald discussion continues, another topic has unfortunately drawn attention for completely different reasons. Puka Nacua remains involved in an off-field civil case that has continued generating public attention. A newly circulated version of a previously released photograph has once again brought the situation back into the spotlight. The updated image reportedly provides a wider and clearer view than the original version. At this stage, it remains important to separate facts from speculation. According to the information discussed, this is still a civil matter. There are currently no criminal charges against Puka Nacua, and there is reportedly no expectation that criminal charges will be filed. That distinction matters because many conversations online have blurred the difference between civil and criminal proceedings. As things currently stand, the situation remains within the civil process. However, that does not necessarily mean the NFL will ignore the matter. The league has its own personal conduct policies and has historically handled situations independently of the criminal justice system. League discipline does not always depend on criminal convictions or even criminal charges. As public attention continues growing, there is naturally some discussion about whether the NFL could eventually review the matter under its own policies. At this point, there has been no confirmed league discipline announced, but it remains something worth monitoring as additional developments become available. Nobody enjoys discussing situations like this, especially when they involve one of the team's most important players. Fans would much rather spend their time talking about football, training camp battles, and championship expectations. Unfortunately, when significant stories involve key members of the roster, they become part of the conversation surrounding the team. For now, though, The biggest storyline remains Aaron Donald. Even though the latest update delays expectations, it does not eliminate hope. In fact, the overall message still suggests that Donald is seriously exploring the possibility of returning. The difference is simply that he refuses to make that decision until he knows his body is prepared. Considering everything he accomplished throughout his career, that approach feels completely understandable. Aaron Donald has never accepted being average. He built his reputation by setting standards that very few players could ever reach. If he returns, he wants to return as someone capable of helping the Rams win football games, not simply adding another famous name to the roster. That mentality is exactly what made him one of the greatest defensive players the NFL has ever seen. So while the waiting continues, Rams fans probably should not panic. Training camp is approaching quickly. Preseason games are right around the corner, and there is still plenty of time before the regular season begins. The possibility of Aaron Donald returning remains alive, even if patience is required a little longer than many hoped. Now I want to hear from every Rams fan watching. After hearing everything in this latest update, do you still believe Aaron Donald will return before the regular season begins? Or do you think the wait could extend even longer? And if he does come back, would you rather see him play a limited role to stay fresh? Or do you believe he can still make the same kind of impact that made him one of the greatest defensive players in NFL history? Share your thoughts, because this conversation is only getting started, and every new development will bring us one step closer to finally learning what Aaron Donald decides next.